Hello and welcome to Fast and Factual. I'm Utsaf Parekh and I'll take you through the top 50 stories of the day. We begin with updates from the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. It has entered its 25th day. Israeli forces are reportedly advancing on Gaza City in two directions. They are operating in north of Gaza, close to the Mediterranean Sea, and tanks are coming from a road to the south of Gaza City. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ruled out a ceasefire in Gaza, saying that this is the time for war. Netanyahu added that Israel's ground campaign in Gaza created the possibility for the release of the over 235 hostages held by Hamas. He added that Hamas would free the hostages only under pressure, which would be built by the Israeli army's advance. The United States has backed Netanyahu. It said that it does not believe that a ceasefire is the right answer in the current scenario. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said a ceasefire right now would only benefit Hamas. An Israeli soldier who was captured by Hamas was rescued from Gaza in an overnight operation by the IDF. The army private was freed on Sunday night, 3 weeks after she was abducted, along with more than 235 other hostages. Several Israelis gathered outside the house of the soldier and celebrated the news of her release. Israel says its forces struck targets in Syria and Lebanon in response to attacks originating in the countries. The Israeli Defense Forces have released footage of their strikes. The IDF said an aircraft had attacked Hezbollah targets in Lebanese territory. The targets included infrastructure for directing terrorism and military infrastructure of Hezbollah. The IDF says it destroyed Hezbollah posts, weapons and other sites. Amid a worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the United Nations has said that the aid plan is geared to fail without political will. The Commissioner General for the UN Relief and Works Agency accused Israel of collective punishment of the Palestinians in Gaza. Collective punishment is a war crime under the Geneva Convention. The Commissioner called for the UN Security Council to demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. The UN Security Council met to discuss the Israel-Hamas war and called for a ceasefire yesterday. This was after the passage of a non-binding resolution in the UN General Assembly on Friday. The meeting was called by the United Arab Emirates and is the fifth meeting of the Council since the October 7th Hamas attack. Multiple resolutions on a ceasefire have failed to pass at the UN Security Council. Russian President Vladimir Putin has blamed the US and its allies for the current crisis in West Asia. In a televised address, Putin said the ruling elites of the US and their satellites stood behind the killing of Gaza's Palestinians. Putin also accused Ukraine and agents of Western special services for the anti-Semitic riot at the airport in Russia's Dagestan region. Washington dismissed Moscow's claims, calling it classic Russian rhetoric. 26 trucks containing food supplies and medical equipment passed through the Egypt-Gaza-Rafah border crossing on Monday. The Palestine Red Crescent said 144 trucks have delivered supplies to the enclave since October 7th. Prior to the war, some 500 trucks carrying aid and other goods entered Gaza every day. Aid agencies say there is insufficient food, water, medicine and fuel for the Palestinians living in Gaza. Thousands have been seeking shelter at the Al-Quds hospital in North Gaza as Israeli strikes continue. The Palestine Red Crescent Society says that the Al-Quds hospital has been providing shelter to around 14,000 people. They've been displaced since the Israel-Hamas war began on October 7th. Videos show people crowded in the corridors of the hospital, while others were seen lying outside the entrance. Aid agencies have raised concerns over the threats faced by the displaced Gazans. In related news from the US, the White House has voiced concern over anti-Semitic threats or incidents on college campuses. This is after reports of an increase in anti-Jewish incidents at universities. The tensions in West Asia have prompted officials to tighten campus security. In a briefing, the White House spokesperson said there is no place for hate in America. The Biden administration will also meet American Jewish leaders to discuss steps to counter the surge in anti-Semitism. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden said he intends to end the participation of 4 African nations from a trade program. The countries are Gabon, Niger, Uganda, and the Central African Republic. Biden says he was taking the decision due to gross violations of human rights by the Central African Republic and Uganda, and he cited coup hit Niger and Gabon's failure to protect the rule of law. Biden says he will remove these countries as beneficiaries from the African Growth and Opportunity Act trade program. The face-off between China and the Philippines continues. This is over a recent ship collision in disputed waters in the South China Sea. China's military has now accused a Filipino military ship of illegally entering waters near the Scarborough Shoal region without authorization. It asked the Philippines to stop its provocations. Meanwhile, Manila has accused Beijing of dangerous maneuvers in the South China Sea. Singapore's defense minister called on China and the US to improve relations. He said that Asia needs better ties between the two world powers. The minister added that China can do more to promote regional and global stability by being integrated with the rest of the world. He also urged Asian countries to avoid any physical conflict. Canada has banned China's WeChat app from government devices. Western governments have raised security concerns about the app. They're saying it could be used to spy on users. Pakistan has rejected the UN's warning against expelling Afghan refugees. Islamabad has imposed a November 1st deadline to expel the refugees and other illegal migrants. The UN has warned Pakistan that this will trigger a human rights catastrophe. Pakistan claims its move is compliant with international norms and principles. 3 Chinese astronauts returned safely to Earth after 5 months in orbit at the country's Tiangong space station. A video showed their return capsule parachuting down into the barren Gobi Desert. The astronauts have returned after conducting scientific experiments. The crew's replacements arrived at the space station last week. Venezuela's Supreme Justice Tribunal has suspended the results of an opposition presidential primary that took place earlier this month. This is despite a deal between the government and the opposition that allowed each side to choose its candidate. Venezuela's Attorney General said he was investigating the primary for electoral violations, financial crimes, and conspiracy. The opposition insists that the primary was transparent and fair. In climate news, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres continued to sound the alarm on the looming climate crisis on Monday. He shared a video of himself at the base of Mount Everest. He wrote about the impact of the climate crisis on the Himalayas. Guterres said that the melting glaciers in the region are threatening lives and livelihoods. Deforestation has a far greater impact on regional temperatures than previously thought. This is according to a new study of the Brazilian Amazon. The research shows that deforestation can cause warming at distances up to 100 kilometers away. According to the study, the greater the forest clearance, the higher the temperatures could reach. Mexican experts have warned of a possible intensification of hurricanes due to global warming. They said this during an online press conference regarding Hurricane Otis. While the total number of hurricanes are expected to stay the same, the hurricanes of greater intensity are expected to increase. The number of people dead and missing due to Hurricane Otis has risen to nearly 100. Otis battered the Mexican city of Acapulco with strong winds damaging homes, hotels and other buildings. It has flooded the city, severing communications as well as road and air connections. Meanwhile, Central American nations are bracing for tropical storm Pilar. It's expected to make landfall today. Authorities in El Salvador have already reported 2 deaths linked to heavy rains and wind. Bolivian firefighters are battling forest fires raging near a national park. The park is a protected area that includes parts of the Bolivian Amazon. Helicopters have been deployed to help firefighters and authorities on the ground. Locals have also said that the fire has torn through crops in the area. Police officials arrested 62 climate activists in London yesterday. This was after they disrupted traffic with what they called a slow march. The protesters were from the Just Stop Oil group. They walked slowly on the road around Parliament Square for around 10 minutes. The group has promised to organize slow marches in London at an unprecedented scale for the next 3 weeks. Just Stop Oil has been demanding an end to new oil and gas exploration by Britain in the North Sea. Now on to business and tech news. America's United Auto Workers Union has reached a tentative deal with General Motors. This is days after it negotiated deals with automakers Ford and Stellantis. Under the deal with GM, pay for veteran workers will rise by 33%. Once the deal is ratified, it will mark an end to the UAW's labor strike against the Detroit 3 automakers. The strike has been ongoing since mid-September. Some American pharmacy employees have launched a 3-day walkout. This is at CVS Health Corps and Walgreens Boots Alliance. The employees are striking to push the companies to improve working conditions and add more staff to their stores. Tech workers at the New York Times went on a half-day strike yesterday. They were protesting against the media company's return to office rules. The employees have accused the NYT of forcing them to come back to the office without negotiating in good faith. Private equity firm Blackstone has said it'll buy a majority stake in India's care hospitals. It'll commit $1 billion to the hospital chain. The financial firm will hold over 75% of care hospitals. The deal marks Blackstone's entry into India's healthcare services sector. Banking giant HSBC's profits more than doubled in the third quarter. It reported a profit of $7.7 billion. However, investors were still left disappointed. This is because the profit was lower than market forecasts. Meanwhile, HSBC has said it aims to complete a $3 billion transaction in share buybacks this year. Samsung Electronics has said that the demand for its chips will gradually recover in the coming year. It said this in its third quarter earnings report. The company has reported its highest quarterly profit so far this year. However, Samsung's profit was 78% lower than what it had recorded in the same period last year. Google's CEO Sundar Pichai testified in the tech giant's US antitrust trial yesterday. He defended his company against allegations that it broke antitrust law to maintain top position in the search engine market. Pichai said that it was important to make Google the default search engine in devices to maintain user loyalty. The US Department of Justice is probing whether the company acted illegally to gain dominance in the online search market. Meta Platforms will now offer an ad-free subscription plan in the European Union. This is for its social media platforms Facebook and Instagram. The monthly subscription plan will cost about $11 per month for web browsers. Meanwhile, mobile app users will have to shell out $13 a month for the monthly subscription. US President Joe Biden has signed an executive order to lower the risks posed by artificial intelligence. The order requires AI developers to conduct safety tests and share the results with the US government. The move is the latest step by the Biden administration to set guardrails around AI. Meanwhile, tech firms like TikTok and Snapchat and some national governments have signed a joint statement. They have pledged to work together to counter child sex abuse images generated by artificial intelligence. This was announced at an event in the UK yesterday. The US, German and Australian governments are among the joint statement's 27 signatories. Moving to sports, let's start with updates from the Cricket World Cup. Afghanistan beat Sri Lanka by 7 wickets in yesterday's match. Sri Lanka batted first and were bowled out for 241 runs in the final over. Left-arm pacer Fazal Haq Farooqi took 4 wickets for Afghanistan. Then the Afghan batters found the middle of the bat with ease. Azmatullah Omarzai, Rehmat Shah and captain Hashmatullah Shahidi all scored half-centuries in the successful run chase. New Zealand pacer Lockie Ferguson has suffered an injury in his right Achilles tendon. Ferguson was seen leaving the field during New Zealand's match against Australia on Saturday. Scans have now revealed the extent of the tear to the fast bowler's Achilles. Ferguson has been ruled out of New Zealand's match against South Africa tomorrow. Former Pakistan captain Inzamam-ul Haq has stepped down as the chief selector for the men's cricket team. This comes after Pakistan's cricket board launched an investigation into allegations of biased selection for the World Cup. During an interview, Inzamam said that since he was facing an inquiry into misconduct, it was only ethical for him to step down. Moving to football, Luis Rubiales, the former Spanish Football Federation chief, has been handed a 3-year ban by FIFA. Rubiales has been barred from all football-related activities with immediate effect. Earlier, FIFA had banned Rubiales for 90 days, but has now decided to extend the ban based on findings of a disciplinary committee. Remember, Rubiales had forcibly kissed Spanish player Jenny Hermoso on stage after they won the Women's World Cup. Argentina captain Lionel Messi has won a record-extending 8th Ballon d'Or for Best Player last night. He beat Norway's UEFA Player of the Year, Erling Haaland, to clinch the prestigious prize. Messi now has the most Ballon d'Or trophies, 3 more than longtime rival Cristiano Ronaldo. Meanwhile, Spain's Aitana Bonmati won her first Women's Ballon d'Or award. She beat Australian striker Sam Kerr to clinch the coveted trophy. England midfielder Jude Bellingham won the Copa Trophy for Best Player aged under 21 years. Bellingham was picked ahead of German winger Jamal Musiala for the award. 20-year-old Bellingham was also recognized at the Ballon d'Or ceremony last night. In tennis, world number 2 Carlos Alcaraz says he does not feel 100% perfect ahead of his match at the Paris Masters. During an interview, Spain's Alcaraz said despite having time to recover, he still feels a little pain in his back. Alcaraz is due to face Russia's Roman Safiullin in the round of 32 matchup tomorrow. In hockey, India beat China 2-1 in the Women's Asian Championships tournament. Deepika and Salima Tete scored the goals for India in the first half of the game. With the win, India have now confirmed their spot in the semi-final. Organizers for the Pan Am Games are facing backlash for not conducting the women's 20-kilometer race walk final properly. The race was held on Sunday and saw Peru's Kimberly Garcia cross the finish line in 1 hour 12 minutes. Officials judged Garcia's performance as the new world record. That was until organizers realized that their course was nearly 3 kilometers short of being 20 kilometers. The Olympic Committee has allowed the winners to keep their medals, but their times have been declared invalid. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared December 15th a national holiday. This is to celebrate South Africa's Rugby World Cup win. Ramaphosa said the holiday was meant to honor the spirit of sports in the country. On Sunday, South Africa beat New Zealand 12-11 to win the Rugby World Cup for a record 4th time. Now for news from the entertainment world. Matthew Perry's co-stars from the 90s sitcom Friends paid tribute to their fallen castmate. In a joint message, the co-stars said Perry's death was an unfathomable loss. Actors Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Lisa Kudrow, Matt LeBlanc and David Schwimmer spoke out publicly for the first time since news of Matthew Perry's death. The 54-year-old actor was found lifeless in a jacuzzi in his Los Angeles home on Saturday. Actor Robert De Niro appeared at a Manhattan court for a gender discrimination lawsuit trial. De Niro is expected to defend himself against his former assistant, Graham Chase Robinson. Robinson has sued De Niro and his company Canal Productions over sexist comments and more. The civil trial is expected to last for 2 weeks. Oprah Winfrey, David Oyelowo, Kevin Lucky Johnson and Debbie Allen were among the many star guests who joined Tyler Perry at the world premiere of a new documentary about his life. The documentary, called Maxine's Baby, The Tyler Perry Story, had been in the making for almost a decade. It explores how filmmaker and studio head Tyler Perry went from the pain of childhood trauma to success as a media mogul. American actor and comedian Henry Winkler, who has written over 24 children's books, is now out with a memoir. Having battled severe dyslexia all his life, Winkler writes about his unhappy childhood. He spoke about growing up with parents who called him dumb because he didn't do well at school. He also writes about his FONZ fame. He played the role of Arthur Fonzarelli in the show Happy Days that made him an overnight star. According to reports, Channing Tatum and Zoe Kravitz are headed to the altar. The two stars were first linked in 2021 and are now reportedly engaged. Over the weekend, they were photographed leaving a Halloween party, with Kravitz dressed as Rosemary Woodhouse from the 1968 horror movie Rosemary's Baby. That's all for this episode of Fast and Factual. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.